So I just did something that I've been wanting to do for my kids for a few years now, and that's build a giant swing set using these metal brackets from Eastern Jungle Gym. Now, I saw those on Amazon. They were about 70 bucks, and it's easy to look at those and think, oh, that's not that expensive, but then underestimate all the little pieces you're gonna need to make this a reality. And that looks pretty darn good, doesn't it? So in this video, we're gonna do a quick overview of the setup process because there was not a lot of instructions that came with any of these things. And then be sure to stay tuned to the end because I'm gonna do a full cost breakdown of what everything costs and what it costs total so that you can know exactly what you're getting into if you wanna do this yourself. But first, what's up? I'm Jeff, welcome to my backyard. This is Fun Sized Adventures, which is my channel all about helping parents like you build backyard fun like this while staying on a budget. I mean, you're gonna need a big budget for this. Anyway, so the first thing you're gonna need is a level spot in your yard. Now my spot was mostly level, but a little dip in it where the ground never quite dried out. So what I did was I went to Lowe's and bought 24 bags of mulch because they were on sale for $2 a bag and it's fairly inexpensive. And that brought everything up to level and kind of just added that nice mulch aesthetic to it, helped keep the grass from growing through. But if your spot's already level, that's completely unnecessary. As far as how big of a spot you're gonna need, I went with a 12-foot beam for the top and 10-foot 4x4s for the legs. So that brought the finished dimensions of my swing set to 16.5 feet wide by 9 feet deep. And then from the ground up to the bottom of the beam is 8 foot 8 inches. So if you're going for this size, you're gonna need about 10 feet deep of a spot by about 17 feet wide. But you can buy the top beam, the legs in all sorts of different dimensions to fit your space. Speaking of the lumber, I went with pressure treated lumber because that's all that my local Lowe's carried in the dimensions I needed. You need 4x4 posts for the legs, you need a 4x6 beam for the top. And when they're pressure treated, sometimes they're a little bit waterlogged at the store, making them pretty heavy. The 4x4 legs were not too bad, but that top beam was a beast to carry. Shout out to the friendly stranger in the Lowe's parking lot that helped me get that on top of my van. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been able to get home. Now, the beauty of this metal bracket system is you don't need to cut anything. You can buy these in the dimensions you want and then just assemble it. Now, the lumber did have a little bit of a sharp edge on it, which shouldn't be an issue, but somebody felt the need to sand it for me. Safety first! Good old safety dad. Then when it came to getting the brackets onto the beams, the beam was laying out in the rain for a couple days beforehand, and I don't know if that swelled it a tiny bit, but one side was very difficult to get on, the other side was just a little bit difficult. But what I ended up doing was taking a chisel and rounding the corners slightly more, and then the one more difficult side, I actually had to taper down the end just a hair just to even get that started onto sliding on. Then once that's slid all the way on, it's time to pre-drill your holes and put your bolts in that hold those brackets to the beam. From just eyeballing it, I decided a 7/32 drill bit was key, but you could probably go either way a little bit. And then the bolts had 1/2 inch heads, so I used a 1/2 inch socket with an adapter on my cordless drill to make short work of drilling those in. The next thing you're gonna need is the swing hangers, and you're gonna have to lay those out and figure out exactly where you want to place them along the beam. It's easier to do it now while you have the beam down here before the beam is up above your head because I hate doing anything like this. And after doing quite a bit of research and then kind of fudging the numbers a little bit to make this exact thing work, what I went with was 12 inches between the swings, 17 inches for each regular swing, and then we have the big saucer swing down the end. That left us with 29 inches left for that, which was just about perfect. And then as far as at either end, that last bracket, I just left about 1/4 inch between that and the A-frame bracket in order to just make them not touch, because I don't know, I'm cooties, I guess. Now these swing hangers I got were from a company on Amazon called AB USA, and they seem to be very strong, very good quality. They actually have bearings in there that make it very silent to swing. Now one thing that came with those were these stickers that laid out where the holes should go for you. So what I did was I took my little X's that I put down the beam, and then I took the stickers and I folded them in half both ways so that I had an X crease on the sticker that I could line up with the X on my beam and then stick that down. For these holes, I went a slightly bigger drill bit with 15/64, but you could go up to 1/4 inch because we're talking about such minuscule numbers here. That was the one I had that looked best when I eyeballed it. And that's how I do a lot of things. I'm sure all the dads out there can relate that sometimes you just gotta go with your gut. And after drilling the holes, you remove all those stickers, which is so satisfying. And now it's time to attach those hangers, which I quickly found out that the other bolt that holds the little swivel part on there was in the way of screwing these down. So what I had to do was undo those, which luckily those seem to just be hand tight. So I undid that bolt, pulled those out, and then was able to attach the base plate of the hanger to the beam, and then put that all back together hand tight so the swivel was back on there. Now after continuing that all the way down the beam, I just went back with a couple wrenches and tightened those bolts on the swivel part just a little bit, not too tight because I didn't want to put pressure on the little arms of the bracket there, but just enough that I didn't feel like they were going to come loose on their own anymore. And now we're heading into the final assembly. You want to take everything and bring it to where you're gonna put it, because once you put this together, you're not carrying it very far without a small army of people. So bring it to where you need it, ideally off to the side slightly, so that you can position those two legs so that you can tilt it up and then it's basically in the right spot. And for this next part, I would recommend that you have at least 3 adults. We had 4 adults and several kids, but I think that you could get by with just 3 adults, maybe with less, but why risk it if you have people available? So first you're gonna take 2 legs on the same side, slide them into the slots on the A-frame bracket, and do your best to utilize the weight of the lumber and or pressure from people pulling to try to keep these legs as splayed out to the side and away from the where the other leg is going to be as possible, so that you know you're going to have the most broad base possible when this is stood up, because that'll just make it a little bit more stable and a little bit less likely to shimmy around, because there's not much play, but there is the tiniest bit of play. So after doing that, while you're pre-drilling and putting the bolts in to the first 2 legs, you're going to do the same thing to the second 2 legs, although this time you're probably going to have somebody hold that second leg up on their shoulder to kind of create that pressure, because the weight of the lumber itself isn't going to pull it the way you want it. And then that brings us to the moment we've all been waiting for, lifting this thing up into its final position. This was kind of scary. It's that top beam is so heavy and you're kind of lifting it. I didn't know how the leverage of that, if it was going to try to flip over behind us, but it got done. And like I mentioned, I would recommend getting as much help possible for that, because it's kind of like an old-fashioned like barn raising. Like, you want to get as much people together, have a good time doing it. Now it's time to get the fun started by hanging the swings. The swing hangers at the top came with a carabiner. Click that on there. Now where this is a taller swing set than usual, the swings that you bought might have chains that aren't long enough, in which case you can buy more chain at your local hardware store or off Amazon. And the easiest way to cut that is with some bolt cutters like this. There's other methods, but nothing beats the ease and simplicity of this. And now you're ready to go. You could start swinging here. And the kids had no issues swinging here. But once I got on it and started to swing, I did notice that even though I didn't want to, I'm probably gonna have to stake this down, because it did start to rock when I started swinging pretty far. They sell stakes specifically for this purpose off of Amazon, but they were fairly expensive. At Lowe's, I found these 18-inch metal stakes that already had holes drilled through them that I thought would do great putting them in at an angle, but that wasn't quite enough. But then I remembered I have these left over from another project. These are 3-foot long fence posts. I took these and I used my wood splitting maul and I tapped this full length, everything but the top 6 inches down into the ground at an angle. And then this already has holes through it, screwed through those. And these are only like $5 a piece at Lowe's. This one's kind of broken. And it's seen better days because it's been laying over there behind my shed for like 10 years. But after doing that to 3 of the corners, that seems to be doing the job of really holding it down. Now, the reason I didn't do that last corner is because over that way is where my leach field is, and I'm not 100% sure under the ground how far that stuff goes over there, and I don't want to bang this into the ground and hit any feces or anything else like that at all. So at that point, you're left with what you see here, this giant swing set in all its glory. Now it's time to talk pricing. So to get the basic frame of the swing set, you're gonna need the swing set brackets from Eastern Jungle Gym, are $72.99 for the set of 2. That's 1 for each end. The AB USA swing hangers, they came in a 4-pack, and I got 2 of those for a total of $87.98. And then for the top beam, we had that pressure treated 4x6, that was 12 feet long. That was $28.18. For the 4 legs, we had 10-foot 4x4s that were pressure treated, and that came to a total of $71.12. So for the basic frame, that brought us to a grand total of $260.27, which, like I said at the beginning, you kind of see those brackets and you're like, oh, this is gonna be inexpensive. And already at that point, we're already up to $260. But as Billy Mays used to say, but wait, there's more. Whereas this is a higher swing set than usual, even if you already have swings, which we already had all these swings, so we didn't have to factor that into the cost for us. We did have to extend all the chains. So we needed 2 10-foot lengths of chain. That came to $25.96. And then we needed to get 6 chain quick links, which were about $3 each. That came to a total of $19.08. Then for stakes, you could get these 4 fence posts, or even if you got the other metal stakes, they were each about $5 each. So those 4 stakes came to a total of $19.92. So that brings our new grand total up to $325.23. But hold up, maybe you don't have swings. Maybe you gotta buy your own swings. Can you start to see that this is starting to get out of hand? To buy the green swings, like the one you see closest to me there, Amazon had these from Eastern Jungle Gym as well for a 3-pack that came to $51.41. Then the spiderweb swing we have at the other end was $69.99 off of Amazon, which brings our grand total, let's call it, up to $446.63. And then, like I said, this was completely unnecessary, but for my build here, I had to buy those 24 bags of mulch, which came to $48, which brings our final total up to $494.63. So on the bright side, we're still under $500, right? No. Uncle Sam had something else to say about that. Here in the grand old state of Maine, we have a 5.5% sales tax, which came to $27.20, which brings the final, no more jokes about it, total to $521.84. So as you can see, we're a far cry from where I thought buying those $70 brackets would bring a relatively cheap and easy way to build a swing set. Now, I must say, it was very, very easy, and I would highly recommend it. But just know that it's probably not going to be as cheap as you thought. I hope that all this information gives you a better idea of what it would cost before you get into it, so you can decide if this is something that will fit in your budget, or if maybe you want to think about a smaller swing set. But at the end of the day, the important thing is the kids love it. And see that giant saucer swing down there? If you want to know more information about that swing, check out this video right here. Until next time, get out there in your own backyard with your family. Try not to spend too much money, and have a fun-sized adventure of your own. See ya.
Thank you guys, hit the like button.